Carl, you want to do like a after we finish?
You want me looking at the camera or
Yeah,
looking
is he
at
looking straight at the camera?
That's why I put Al there.
So he's looking at Al?
Yeah.
Okay.
We want it
Just
to be more.
like an interview kind of
More
thing?
informal.
Okay, more informal.
Okay, anytime you're ready, Chief.
You know, water is perhaps one of the most common compounds on Earth. Let me start over. I don't want to use the word compound. Natural resources. Water is perhaps one of the most Start over. That's the way you get, then you cuss a couple of times.
Yeah.
And then,
Oh yeah, I remember that.
anytime.
Yeah, anytime you're ready.
You know, water is perhaps one of the natural resources that we take for granted. 70% of the Earth is covered by water. But when we really think about it, of that 70%, most of it is salt water. About 2% or 3%, let me just, I'm going to talk a little bit and then you may want to go ahead and roll and start over.
Yeah.
You just keep going.
You just keep going. I'm going to keep rolling, so
Okay.
you just keep
Cut
going.
and paste.
Water is probably one of the most common natural resources on Earth. You know, it's something that we take for granted. 70% of the Earth is covered by water. But of that 70%, only 3% is fresh water. And of that 3%, 2% is locked up in ice, in glaciers, and in the Arctic. 8/10,000ths of 1% of the water on Earth is available, renewable fresh water. Probably the most important substance we have. In fact, if we don't touch water every day, or almost every day, we've got big problems. We depend upon it. It's important for drinking, transportation, all the things that water has done for us as a human society. And then when you connect water and forests, it begins to paint a wonderful picture of why natural resources and forest management is important. Because of all of the resources we have, okay, I'm gonna kind of go that track. And
You picking up the airplane?
how is the pace
Yeah, it's
okay?
fine. It's fine. No airplane.
Okay.
Chief, basically,
Yeah.
just like you explained it to Al there. So.
Water is one of our most abundant resources. 70% of the Earth is water. But of that 70%, only 3% is fresh water. And of that 3%, only 8/10,000ths is renewable, available fresh water for human use. And when we take a look at our forested landscapes in the United States, 1/3 of the United States is forested, but 2/3 of the runoff comes off of the forested landscapes. In fact, the cleanest water in the United States flows off of our forested lands and our national forests. Now, I'm one that grew up in northern Wisconsin's beautiful lake country, the Chequamegon National Forest, and never ever did I think I'd see a time where water, or better yet, a shortage of water would be a problem. But if we take a look at not only the desert Southwest, but in many parts of the country, we see water shortages, water problems, runoff problems, and it's really all linked to the way we manage the land. That should take care of one.
Good.
Very good. Very, very good. Do you want to go a tighter shot on this one, Carl? Or do you want to just leave it go? We can do, what we can do is keep it as the same shot, let them keep rolling, and then we'll pick the ones that are really short and then go in on close-ups on those.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay. All right. Anytime we're still rolling. Got plenty of tape. Whenever you feel comfortable.
If we take a look at the dependence of our urban communities and our urban areas on water, we see some very, very important connections. Let's take a look at the city of Los Angeles, and then let's take a look at the Angeles National Forest that's within that basin. Water is one of the limiting factors to Los Angeles. In fact, most of the water that's used in Los Angeles is imported. It comes from Northern California, other parts of the state, yet the runoff from the rain in Los Angeles is moved right out into the ocean. And think if we could capture more of that runoff. In fact, of the Angeles National Forest, probably 30 to 40% of the drinking water that's used in the Los Angeles basin comes from these forested landscapes. But we can do better than that. And it all depends upon how we manage the land. And if we take a look at what forests do for us with relation to water, it's just phenomenal. Because the function of watersheds and the function of forests is really to catch, store, and release water over time. And what happens is the rainfall comes down, it's captured by the litter layer, by the forest floor. It recharges our aquifers, some of which might not be tapped for hundreds of miles away. It recharges our groundwater tables. And all this occurs on our forested landscapes. In fact, one of the reasons the Forest Service was set up originally focused on water and watersheds. 3 major pieces of initial legislation focus on watershed health and restoration. For example, the most basic, the Organic Act, 1897, states this, that no forest reserve shall be established except to protect the forest within the boundary, to secure favorable conditions for water flows, and to provide a sustainable supply of timber for use of the American people. We see the Weeks Act in 1911 that enabled the establishment of the Eastern National Forest, that really restored the devastated landscape that we had in the Appalachian Mountains, that we had in the Northeast, that we had in northern Wisconsin, in the upper Midwest where I grew up. These were reforested and are now functioning much better, and it's a credit to the employees of the Forest Service, to our partners in the state agencies, and what they've done to restore these watersheds. Because watersheds are about catching, storing, and releasing water over time.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
That took care of a couple of these. I'm
Yeah,
not
it really
sure
did.
just exactly which ones. I'll let you keep track of that. I need to make the point about the 80%. Okay.
Yeah, we kind of covered
You have
the
this
airport.
this
Gonna
point
sell
in
them.
here about the northern. We need to look toward the northern Rockies. Are you going to dub something in there? Is that important that I cover that? That's on
Your
between
osprey
3 and
flew
4.
right
Yeah,
in
yeah,
when he was talking.
Did he really?
Right behind him, the osprey came in. It was gorgeous.
Did that show right in there?
The
'Cause
osprey flew right
saw it
behind
flying
you.
Low and,
Right
I
behind.
should be, as we're talking here, I should be looking this way. So in
Yeah,
case.
yeah. Okay.
I think if you hit on that, what we're going to have you do anyway is we're going to just have you read the whole thing.
Right.
And,
Okay.
and that's
You
know,
can look at it and
Okay.
read it the whole,
Yeah,
whole thing.
okay.
because really you covered a lot in voiceover 4.
Mm-hmm. I'll catch.
But I'll tell you what, let's not worry about it right now.
Okay, I'll
you-
catch 3. I'll catch the points in 3, and then we'll move on.
Okay, yeah, from 3, then we'll jump to 5.
Good. I often refer to the national forests as the headwaters of the nation. And the fact is, the national forests make up 8% of the landscape of the United States. They provide 14% of the runoff. But more importantly, 80% of the rivers and streams in the United States start on national forest lands. And if you think about the terrain, it's really easy to understand. Much of the bottomlands was developed initially, became ranches, became farms, agricultural crops. Today are urban developments. But if we take a look at our mountain ranges, we really see the distribution of the arterial system of the United States as we think about the water. And in fact, I view water as part of it's really the circulatory system of the United States, and the rivers and streams really reflect how we manage the land. Probably our most important indicator of how we as human beings are doing as stewards of the landscape is reflected in water quality. Okay.
Good point. Good one.
Okay. I should probably refer something here to Chesapeake Bay,
Yeah,
right?
well, that's why I said we'll do 5. Look at 5, and that kind of covers that.
Okay, we're done with that. Done with that. Done with 4.
Been making that point. But yeah, the bay is clearly a national treasure. By all means. It's one of the many things that hopefully will help to restore it.
as we think about our responsibilities as stewards of the land and stewards of the forests, we often associate what the Forest Service does with national forests. But the fact is, we play a much larger role in the forested landscape of the United States. Our state and private programs really focus on assistance with private landowners, cooperation with our partners, to make sure that we have good stewardship on all of our forests. For example, right here in the Chesapeake Bay drainage, in the 1800s, 30% was left forested, 80, yeah, that's right, okay.
Yeah, only about 30% of the forest.
Right here in the Chesapeake Bay drainage, more than 70% of this forested landscape was cut and harvested, having a tremendous impact at that time on the water quality, the runoff, the erosion. Much of it has been reforested, but the work going on here in the Chesapeake Bay now is just phenomenal as people are coming together in an unprecedented way to really focus on water quality, the productivity of the largest estuary in the United States. In fact, one of the goals is to reforest 2,010 miles of the riparian zones by the year 2010 to really function as the filter strips, the filters of the water as it drains into the tributaries that really are the lifeblood of this bay.
Very nice.
Well said. Well
Very
said.
nice.
Well said.
Okay, what else?
That sailboat, just the right location too.
Just he was.
I want
Sorry,
to,
it's
can I
getting
use the
determined.
water bottle as a prop
Sure.
when I talk about,
Sure,
Take the label off.
Well, you can just hold it up and make sure.
Oh, that's
Well, can
right.
you hold it up and let me
I wa-
see where you're
Yeah,
going to do? Just hold it up. I just need to for framing.
we're here from the U.S. Forest Service promoting Poland Springs. No, we can't do that.
You can hold it up from the side though.
Yeah.
So just hold it up like where you're gonna. If you actually hold it closer to your shoulder.
Forest land
Like,
from
or just
Maine.
kinda-
There you
Yeah. Do it as natural. Just let me see where you're gonna do it. Okay. Go ahead and hold it up like you're
Actually,
gonna.
here, just
Carl's getting nervous.
And Carl's.
go. Yeah.
Go ahead, Chief. Hold it up for me. Let's see. That's perfect. That's perfect. Okay. Go ahead. Whenever you're ready. You can,
Of all the natural resources,
look. You're looking at Al.
okay. Of all the natural resource issues that you and I will be faced with in this century, and those employees that follow us, it's my belief that water will be the key issue. And I say this because every place I go, whether it's Atlanta, whether it's the desert southwest, places in Oregon, I read in the paper about water issues. And who would have thought 30 years ago that this bottle of water would be selling on the grocery store shelves today for, say, 99 cents, or maybe in airports for $1.50. Can you imagine if we put a commodity value on water like we typically do of forest products, of energy and minerals, what that would be worth to the American public? In fact, the marginal value of the water flowing off of the national forests that make up 8% of the United States but provide 14% of the runoff of the United States is about $3.7 billion a year. And that's not at the cost of $1.29 a pint. That's at from, say, $6 to $10 an acre foot.
do that one more time.
Yep.
Let's that whole, if you can remember everything you just did, just do it
Okay.
one more time. That's good.
If we take a look at the issues that you and I, as employees of the Forest Service today, face and will face this century, and more importantly, what those that follow us will face, it's my belief that water is going to be our key natural resource issue all over the United States. It's not just an issue of the desert southwest, the Great Basin. It's an issue all over the country. I was in Atlanta earlier this year, water rationing. We had water shortage warnings out in the state of Maryland. It's all over the country. And if we take a look at the value of our forested landscapes and the importance of our stewardship, water is perhaps the most important product, the most important commodity that we probably just take for granted. For example, who would have thought 30 years ago that we'd be paying $1.29 for a pint of water? And if we take a look at the marginal value of water that flows off of the national forests, we come up with a figure of $3.7 billion each year. Now that's not $1.29 a pint. We're talking $6 to $10 an acre foot.
Great.
So
More,
now what we'll do is
even at
just have
today's
you-
prices, more than a
Yeah.
gallon of gasoline.
That's right. I should have mentioned. I want to
and
get
then
that.
we'll do some cutaways.
I usually say that. Get this.
Well, you gotta talk.
As we think about the. Are you rolling?
Yeah, we're rolling.
As we think about the value of water, and we think about the value of a board foot of timber, and we think about the value of a recreation visitor day, who would have thought that we'd be paying more for this than we are for gasoline?
So true.
Amen.
Amen, brother.
Hey, bring back 20. Okay, you want to read this all?
It's
now?
true.
Should I
Yeah.
just go through a read?
You can just,
Yep.
yeah,
You can go
just
through a
read.
read. How many are they broken up to? One on each.
Most abundant natural
Wait,
resource.
start it. Go ahead. Sorry about that.
Water is one of the most abundant natural resources on our planet. 70% of the earth is covered by water. Yet today, we are challenged to provide enough water, high quality water, to millions of people. Of all the water on earth, only 3% is fresh water, and of that, only a tiny fraction, 8/10,000ths of 1%, is available to us for use. Watersheds are at the root of our mission in the Forest Service, and we today are focusing on them more than ever as part of the Forest Service Natural Resources agenda. I grew up surrounded by lakes in northern Wisconsin, the Chequamegon National Forest. I never thought there'd be a water shortage. It seemed we had an inexhaustible resource, but today, wherever you look, the booming population of the desert Southwest and many other places, you soon realize we are running dry. Let me get, I'll let you sort these out, Carl. And just, I got them all mixed up. Three,
Underfed them too.
Oh, you got a lot of them.
here we go. Today, Los Angeles imports most of its water from hundreds of miles away. Because its watersheds, let me start over. Los Angeles today imports water from hundreds of miles away. Because its watersheds have been so fundamentally altered, the city has long been subjected to winter floods. That's not very good. Los Angeles imports most of its water from hundreds of miles away. Because its watersheds have been so fundamentally altered, the city has long been subjected to floods. The Angeles National Forest, one of the nation's oldest, was created specifically to control flooding and supply water to Southern California. 30 to 40% of the drinking water for the Los Angeles basin is supplied locally from forest land. By managing the whole urban watershed, we can reduce the need to import water.
Can you do it by managing and then? Yeah, there we go. Thank you. It's a little ruffled. That's okay. Thanks.
I'll start with the 30 to 40%.
Okay.
30 to 40% of the drinking water for the Los Angeles basin is supplied locally from the forest land. By managing the whole urban watershed, we can reduce the need to import water. Okay, that's
Okay.
2 and
2 and 3.
3. Okay, I'll just keep on going.
Okay.
When the West was being settled, the bottom land was sold or distributed for farms. When the West was being settled, the bottom land was sold or homesteaded for farms, ranches, and railroads. The high country remained, and much of this. When the West was being settled, the bottom land was sold or homesteaded for farms, ranches, or railroads. Much of the high country remained forested landscapes that became national forests. From the earliest days of the conservation movement, we were given the stewardship of watersheds. I call the forests the national, I call the national forest the headwaters of our nation, because some 80% of our streams originate on the national forest and are really the source of this nation's water supply. To understand the scale of our responsibility, we only need to look toward the northern Rocky Mountains.
I got a little wind on that last sentence. Just hang on one sec till the breeze. Okay.
I'll read the whole thing again, it's short.
Okay. Thank you.
When the West was being settled, the bottom land was sold or homesteaded for farms, and ranches. The high country remained, and today much of it is national forests. From the earliest days of the conservation movement, we were given the stewardship of watersheds. In fact, I call the national forests the headwaters of the nation because some 80% of the streams in the United States originate on national forests. To understand the scale of our responsibility, we need only to look toward the northern Rocky Mountains. Did I garble that last sentence
a little bit?
Just a smidge.
Okay. I call the national forests the headwaters of the nation because so much of our nation's water supply originates on the national forests. To understand the scale of our responsibility, we need only to look toward the north. Well, I got an impediment on that sequence of words. To understand the scale of our responsibility, let's take a look at the northern Rocky Mountains.
There you go.
Yep.
You do better when you're ad-libbing anyway. You do so much better
For me,
when
it's
you're
a lot.
ad-libbing. It's much more powerful.
Give him a chorus beer.
Yeah, that's right. Just let them go. That's it.
Watersheds work by catching, storing, and releasing water over time. Winter snowpacks feed alpine pools. High country streams feed lakes and rivers. These replenish wetlands and recharge aquifers. Trees and streamside vegetation help regulate the effects of storms and the runoff of water and prevent erosion. The Forest Service objectives in maintaining healthy ecosystems, therefore, are a crucial. I need to keep that singular. The Forest Service objective of maintaining healthy ecosystems has a crucial impact on the function of our watersheds. We've learned over the years that water is a product of all that goes on within a watershed. In fact, of all of our actions on the landscape, they are reflected by the quality and health of our waters. As we begin to examine water quality, we've got to look at agriculture, at forest management, at industry, and at urban development. To see the effects over time, we look eastward here at the Chesapeake Bay. This is an area with a long history of development and use.
Can we read that one again?
Okay.
Yeah.
To see their effects.
Okay. To see their effects over time, we look eastward here at the Chesapeake Bay. This is an area with a long history of development and use.
One more time.
To see their effects over time, we'll look eastward at the Chesapeake Bay. This is an area with a long history of development and use.
Is that it? Is that everything?
No.
Okay, there's one more.
The national forests in the east are a patchwork of lands that historically had been heavily abused. The national forests in the east are a patchwork of lands that historically had been heavily abused. By the late 1800s, less than 30% of this watershed remained forested. Much of it has been cut over and burned over for fuel, for industry, and converted to agriculture. Watersheds were devastated. The rivers were changed forever. In the 20th century, industrial growth was a big part of the Chesapeake Bay watershed.
Excuse me one sec. We got to start from the rivers. There was a little wind blast that came through.
Okay. Watersheds were devastated, and the rivers changed forever. In the 20th century, industrial growth was a big part of the Chesapeake Bay watershed. Factories, along with intensive agriculture and urban development, changed the landscape dramatically. The scope of this project is enormous. Throughout the Chesapeake Bay watershed, we intend to plant 2,010 miles of riparian forest buffers by the year 2010. It will take all of our efforts to see a project like this through, but we're seeing that we can make a difference. The Chesapeake Bay Restoration Project has shown us that even in heavily degraded ecosystems, we can make a difference.
One more.
One more?
Yeah. It all comes back to watershed management. Right? Wait a minute. Let me just make sure. I may have mine all mixed up.
Okay,
It all comes back.
It all comes back to watershed management. It all comes back to watershed management, conserving water.
Start again. wind blast. Okay, ready. Wait for the wind to clear. Go ahead.
It all comes back to watershed management, conserving water in the Southwest, protecting the high country and the nation's headwaters, and working across boundaries to restore our great waterways. Water is such a valuable commodity, and the role the Forest Service plays is vital. It's vital in protecting this tremendous national resource. Water is such a valuable commodity, and the Forest Service plays a vital role in protecting this national resource. Want me to read that?
I want you to read
The whole page?
Okay,
yeah. It all comes back to watershed management, conserving water in the Southwest, protecting the high country, the nation's headwaters, and working across boundaries to restore our great waterways. Water is such a valuable commodity, and the Forest Service plays a vital role in protecting this national resource. Okay?
Now you want to just do a couple cutaways, Kevin?
Sure.
We're taking on the big ones with roadless and roads, and so we need to get a recreation program funded. We need parity between state and private national forest system and research.
Okay, thanks.
And then we gotta.
We just know so little about George Bush. I mean, certainly he's done nothing in Texas, but then he really hasn't done. He hasn't had an issue. He's really
Okay.
Some say that the wrong person is on the presidential ticket, and that's the way it turned out. But you know, the Cheney thing was kind of interesting because he doesn't add a thing.
That's
You
true.
know, I mean, all he does is bolster the status quo of the conservative side. I thought they'd end up picking somebody that was really a woman, a minority, something that would be different,
Give the party more interest.
rather than an ultra-conservative from a state with 3 electoral votes. I mean, who would have ever thought that would be the case?
Interesting for you to know. Like I said, this property right out here is the property that the state is in the process of acquiring. Will add a whole reserve system along this part of the bay.
They must have some. They've got to be feeding you.
What we have.
Yeah, they're at the stage right now where the young should be getting about flying. In fact, that might be the young
That's probably-
right there. That's the young one right there who isn't getting off the nest too much.
They're doing all that clamoring.
Doing
for
all
food.
that clamoring,
Yeah.
saying, "Hey, wait a minute, come on, I'm hungry." Yeah,
Fish.
They're at the point.
See, Kevin, somebody else likes fish too besides
That's
us.
right there.
Yeah.
But I think they actually have a series of series of. BMAT said I was supposed to let Bill Matuszewski said, let you know this was Providence. This is the site of Providence. This is considered to be this was the landfall, the original settlement of Annapolis.
Oh, it
on
was.
this point before it was moved actually over to its present location.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and point to the bay again.
Okay, there's a nice little looks like a fishing boat of some kind coming in right there.
What's the from across the bridge across the Narrows? What is that? About 4 or 5 miles?
It's actually, it's about 4.5 miles from landfall to landfall, and I know that primarily because we have the Bay Bridge run every year, and I run it, and it's a 6.5 mile to 10K, and it's about 4.5 of it's on the bridge. It's a 6, so it's a great run though. I mean, it's no better way to. I mean, it's just an incredible view of the bay that you really can't get any other way. It's a tremendous body of water. There's no doubt about it. Definitely worth our highest efforts to try and keep the patient is stable.
Carl, I've got some trivia for you. What's the deepest part of Chesapeake Bay?
Yeah, there you go.
And how deep? Kevin ought to know that too.
I don't know that.
Do you?
I'm stumped.
The deepest part?
Well,
The
would that
trench?
be at the mouth of-
The deep trench at the mouth
To
of
that article that was in the paper the other day, it's right at the bridge here. It's 174 feet.
Is that-
Really? The deepest part is right there? Yeah, that's what they said.
I don't remember if they said one of the deepest.
Oh, okay.
Or the deepest.
I thought the deepest is actually around 200 and something.
But they
that's-
said 174 feet at right near the Bay Bridge.
Yeah.
So there must be a trench up here someplace. Which
Well,
is-
actually, yeah.
you sort of wonder
But I would think that actually.
The fact
all
that
the way to China.
you could walk almost to that sign out there, potentially. I mean, not in this case, probably 20 feet deep out there. But you certainly could probably walk out a couple hundred feet here and not be over your head.
Okay, I'm still shooting you guys though. I'm just making shooting 3 shots all in one.
It's, I mean, a number of signs. You know, well, the stripers are not, a lot of people claim, well, the bay is, you know, doing better, so the stripers are back, but we all know the stripers are really a matter of fisheries management, not a matter of necessarily
Well, I assume
habitat.
harvest is probably a limiting factor
Yeah,
on that,
yeah,
more so than.
exactly.
And how about, is the grass coming back?
But grasses are kind of like, you know, there's dips and rises. Last year was a really good year for the grasses. This year they're down a little bit, and it's partly this, when we have real high runoff years, we tend to get, you know, the grass population stable.
Phosphorus.